right at the very start, someone with a focus on deriving deep insights, conscious and non-conscious, and using these insights to design and execute behavior shift solutions that lead to business outcomes. Someone who drives value delivery for clients at Terragni Consulting. I want you to put your hands together. She's on screen already. Director Value Delivery, Terragni Consulting Private Limited, Ms. Dipti Sapatnekar. Wonderful to have you here. Everybody, put your hands together. And thank you for being here, ma'am.
Pleasure.
Moving on. Good afternoon. Moving on, we welcome somebody who currently plays the role of regional IT leader in Middle East, North Africa, Turkey, and India for Baker Hughes, Vice President Regional CIO, MENAT, and India, Global Digital Customer Experience Leader, Baker Hughes. Please welcome Mr. Amit Sethi. Keep the applause coming.
Hey,
Yes,
hello Kesha.
Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us. We then welcome Senior Vice President and Head Customer Experience, Reliance Jio Infocomm Limited, someone who has over 30 years of experience in CX, operations and customer service. Please put your hands together for Mr. Suman Kargupta. Welcome, sir. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Up next, we have someone who has 17 plus years of experience and has worked across categories like telecom, beverages, personal care, amongst many others. Senior Vice President Strategy, Future Brands Limited, Mr. Sunil Vashishth joins us.
Thanks, Kesha.
Good afternoon. Welcome, sir. We also have someone who has over 25 plus years of diversified experience, specializes in customer experience and service delivery, is an avid marathoner and triathlete, COO, PYP and CSO, M3M. Please welcome Mr. Ajay Nambiar. Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Here, sir. You've already inspired us. Moving on, we welcome someone who has 35 years of commercial experience. His key strength includes developing CX strategies to provide innovative solutions amongst a lot more. Please welcome from Maersk Global Service Centers, Mr. Padmakumar. Nair, sir, an honor. Wonderful to have you here. And finally,
thank you. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful to have you here, sir. And finally, a 360-degree marketer with experience spanning digital strategy, insights, brand management, and media buying. Please welcome Marketing Director, Swiggy, Mr. Umesh Krishna K, joining us to complete our panel. I'm handing over to our moderator to take us into the next 50 minutes. Ma'am.
Thank you for the introduction.
Welcome.
Thank you, Kesha, for those lovely introductions. A warm welcome to all my panelists here. Good afternoon, and it's really lovely to have you here. Thank you so much. Deep thanks to Kamikaze and to the audience that is with us today. Without further ado, I'm just going to take a quick minute to let everyone know what are we going to discuss today. So what we are discussing today is consumer behavior. No surprises there. This is the customer fest after all. But we are discussing consumer behavior in a specific context. We are discussing it in the context more so of this recent past year, which has been a year of challenges, learning, and new ideas, new approaches for all of us. And what we are hoping to achieve today is to leave our audience with some key takeaways. We are hoping to be able to share examples of what we have seen working in this, what is often called as the new normal. Personally, not a big fan of that term because there is a very, very well-known marketeer whose sentiments I echo on this. Seth Godin, and I'm going to quote him as I open this session. Every normal is new until it becomes a normal. And from the way things seem, this normal is already on its way to becoming normal. And I hope we will be able to expedite the normalcy for our audience today with some key takeaways. With that, I am going to request all our panelists to share one key change in consumers or their markets that they have observed as a quick opening round. And then we will go across again and get into the specifics of how they've dealt with this change within their organizations or what examples they've seen in the market working. So with that, I'd like to open with Mr. Padmakumar Nair. perhaps the most experienced and senior most gentleman on this panel today with a very, very wide and diverse experience. Mr. Nair, if I may please request you to share one key consumer shift or market shift.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Mr. Padmakumar. We can hear you.
I think we lost Dipti. But I think good afternoon to all the panelists here, and it's happy to be here talking to all of you. I think I understood what Dipti was asking. Maybe I can start. I think one of the big changes that we have seen during this pandemic is, how we can be more flexible and agile towards the customer needs. I think we have been a shipping company for a long time and moving cargo from one port to another port. But I think this pandemic taught us just about moving go from a port destination to another port. But the expectations of customers have become more like, and they would like to have cargo delivery. You change how we come to port. That I think using packaged over a period of time have changed. What we used to in the past is not necessarily what we are shipping today, and the speed of delivery has also become a demand from customers. So how quickly we can help customers source their products from one country and how quickly we can deliver it to their destination is something customers are looking for. So more than moving their cargo, it's about what value we can bring in along with Dipti will come back.
Yeah.
I use the time to just talk about our company and where the focus is. So yeah, thanks for that. So I think I just talked about the change that has come around with customer expectations and only for us. It's changing a lot of behaviors basis what customer expectations are, trying to be more flexible, trying to be more agile. I think speed is of essence when it comes to serving these customers, and that's what their expectations are. Managing the change faster, being agile, partnering with them in their requirements, right? And the big thing is they would expect us to reinvent ourselves, come out with new products, come out with new solutions, and help them in their supply chain journey. So that's the big change we have seen.
Very, very interesting. Thank you, Mr. Nair. And I am going to pull one point out from what you've shared, and I'm just going to leave it there because we'll stitch it back together at the end. And I think what you've hinted towards is being more involved in a customer outcome and being quick enough and agile enough to spot it without them really having to make it explicit. Suman, with that, I'm going to bring this to you. One key shift that you would like to share with us today, talk about.
Yeah, thanks, Dipti, and good afternoon, everyone. So, Dipti, I think coming from an industry which is all about connectivity and data services, for us, digital has always been there, right? For this industry, so that's what our product really is. So, this new normal, perhaps for us, has been a normal for a while, as you mentioned earlier. We were always been in this normal. But the shift which we have seen, I think, along with other industries, a lot of customers who were on the edge and who were not willing to kind of adopt to digital in terms of for experiencing or buying products, they made that transition from physical to digital. And if you were to ask me one thing which brands or companies have to focus on going forward, really is how do you retain these customers on the digital? Because there is going to be a tendency of customers to shift back to the physical. right? And as we go forward, I would like to discuss in more detail how I think companies can use AI and specifically augmented reality to actually enhance the digital experience or the digital journeys, if I may say so, to ensure that customers stick to the digital and do not sway back. In fact, if I were to kind of pull some of the concerns that customers have had, a lot of us will agree, right? One of the biggest concerns customers always had with digital was data privacy.
Mm-hmm.
So how do brands ensure, right, that we maintain customer data privacy, data is safe and secure? Because if we recollect the early days of, digital banking, etc., one of the biggest challenges customers always had, and even now when I speak to, elderly people in the family, and I said, hey, stop going to the branch, just do it online, and they'll say, no, paisa chori ho jayega, what will happen? Somebody will steal. So there is this huge concern, right? Which I think across industries we have to address, right? Another example, which I think is an excellent way an industry has dealt with this problem of consumer barriers to digital is e-commerce. The biggest barrier which consumers had to e-commerce was how to, or let me put it in my language, which is a favorite phrase. Our consumers want to be able to table bajao. If I'm not happy, I go to a retailer and I bajao the table. Right? Listen to me. Right? That's a tendency. And when e-commerce came in, the biggest challenge was consumers felt, what if I don't like the product? What if there is a defect? Right? And I think these companies did a wonderful job with kind of coming up with this zero returns policy, zero questions asked return policy.
Zero questions, yeah.
Sure, they bled a bit. I think a lot of some fraud happened, but ultimately they were able to convert a huge percentage of the population, or a sizable percentage, I think, to adopting digital. So there are lessons to be learned for all of us from very successful use cases in how we can retain our customers on digital now that that transition is happening or has happened. And to the point which you made, Dipti, I definitely believe that at the end of it, humans are social animals, right? We will all burn for physical interaction, face-to-face interaction, always across. So, I will be a bit wary about kind of saying, oh, digital will replace physical. I don't think it will replace physical. But what it will definitely do, can do, and should do is it is going to completely enhance the physical journey, right? So digital is going to enhance and make the physical journey far better, and vice versa. And again, these are areas where brands have to work on. How can you use both of these together?
Thank you so much, Suman, for that. And there are two things that I'm going to pick up from what you said about sustaining that behavior shift, making sure customers stays to digital. And Ajay, I'm going to come to you with that in a minute. But before that, I have to say that the table bajao attitude that you spoke about, it's an emotion that we have seen in our work. It's very, very strong driver of how someone adopts digital or they don't. To the extent that, we can measure emotions, and this one emotion is an actual barrier when it comes to customers adopting digital, when it comes to money or when it comes to health, two areas which are very, very prone to anxiety related attitudes. So with that, Ajay, I'm coming to you, and I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and I'm going to, perhaps, I don't think this is a curveball for you. You are a past master at this, but I'm going to still attempt. We're talking about behavior shift, and Suman has already hinted at it. The way I see it, behaviors sometimes shift on the surface, but at the core, at the fundament, the context that drives such behaviors or such shifts is more important to understand. So essentially what I'm coming at is, can we look at consumer behaviors and changes in consumer behaviors from a lens of what we see as a shift as the overt symptom, and organizations trying to go a little beyond that symptom and understand really what is the change in the context that has driven this shift.
Yeah, thanks, Dipti. I think Suman and Padmakumar did give a diverse, but I think very, very relevant view. Suman, I completely agree. Yes, digital exists, but we are social animals, no matter what we do. When I say we are social animals, I must say all of us on the panel are, because we are of probably a similar age group. And to me, I think the criticality of the shift is twofold, Deepti. One, if we look at the age groups, our generation and possibly half of probably the next generation, which is the closer to the 2000 ending late 90s, that generation would love a mixture, a combination of physical and digital, because they've been brought up to a large extent prior to digital being omnipresent. You take the new generation, my kids today, they don't want to interact. Their interaction is, even if I'm sitting in front of you, it is on a digital media. So for them, they are already comfortable. And I'll give you the example of in my family. I didn't get onto Netflix for a long time. I thought Tata Sky was the be all and end all of life. And my daughters were on that, and they said this is the best. And they would sleep at 4 a.m. on their phones on Netflix. And it's not just me. I think all of us would vociferously nod our heads in that direction. That is what the kids do. They're up till 4 a.m. They sleep till 4 a.m. Sleep at 11. Their cycle is very different. For them, digital is the way to be. Don't waste my time. I just want to get it done. I don't want to talk to people, and I'm happy doing it. And if I can contextualize that to the industry that I'm in, real estate, you're seeing a paradigm shift there too. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to bring that, to give a very, very, very stark contrast. The contrast to our buying habits in real estate for us typically would be, hey, take a loan, buy a house, spend your whole life servicing the loan. You're one home, you're proud of it, do it the way you want to, and never leave it. So it's, I won't call it cradle to grave, but at least midlife to grave. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing the shift today. They don't, shift today is, even real estate is getting Uberized.
True.
They do not want to buy because they don't want to stay in a job and get bored or get stuck down. They want to shift. Mm-hmm. If they want to shift, rental works for them. Plus, they don't want the burden of having to take loans and servicing for the life. They want to enjoy the life, spend the money now. It's a huge shift. So we are seeing people moving out from a buy mode to a rent mode. Mm-hmm. Hey, can I do a Uber model of rental? So you're seeing, co-living, all these co-habitats that are coming up. Houses are moving from 3 and 4 bedrooms to now 1 bedroom studios. I'm just giving you that shift in mindset in a very laid back, staid industry like real estate, which thought traditions will remain forever. It doesn't. It is changing. Your OYO rooms have become a model that people are looking at, saying, "Hey, I don't want to buy. I remember this word. One of my customers called it. He said, "Petty pack," and that's a very Mumbai language. That I just got one suitcase. I should be able to pack it, move to the next house. So to me, that's a big shift in mindsets. Mm-hmm. Just contextually, I'm not saying necessarily it is, across the board, but that's a mind shift. I think that's happening. We are adjusting to that. Having said that, I think when we bounce back from, COVID, the vaccination, etc., travel, hospitality will bounce back, and how? So mm-hmm. People will travel. People will want to see face to face. It will not end. So that will come back. But I think to a large extent, people have got comfortable doing that. You brought people online to get rid of transactions.
Interesting.
Transactions, they will get done online because they realize it saves them time to do a lot of other face-to-face interactive communication that they would otherwise have assumed it to be only face-to-face and could not be in any other form.
Very interesting, Ajay. And I think what I'm taking away from what you've just shared is 2 points that when we're looking at shifting behaviors and trying to understand what is the context of that shift, perhaps what we need to understand is what is the underlying emotion that is driving that behavior. So, for example, like you said earlier, when it came to house, I mean, you needed to own your home. That's a very strong emotion at play over there. Vis-a-vis where things are headed. And what I would like to tie it with is the last point that you made, that transactions are going digital, but relationships are not going to go there anytime soon. So perhaps what's important to understand is what does a customer see as a transaction, and where does a customer expect you to understand how to drive a relationship with them. With that, Umesh, I'm going to come to you. I remember when we were discussing this topic, some very interesting thoughts came from you, and I'm going to connect what you're going to speak. I know I'm killing the suspense here, but I'm going to connect what you're going to speak with what Suman said, and he spoke something about concern about data privacy, a sort of a fear, paranoia, if I may use the term. And I think it is something that relates to what happened to the food industry in the last 12 months. Over to you, Umesh, on some key takeaways from there.
Sure. So it was definitely an interesting period for us because we are a tech-enabled B2C company and a pure play B2C company, and we do service almost every demographics, right? And if it's urban India, we are covering most of urban India, and there's potentially, you could use us to order food maybe 4 to 5 occasions a day, right? Grocery maybe once a week or a top up in the middle of the week. So there are, we are someone we are a business very close to consumers, and that actually puts us, we always had an advantage because of it. Almost you could get a daily, monthly, very updated feedback of how consumers are behaving. And that set us up well in terms of planning their life cycle, figuring out what they want, figuring out how, you can make things better for them. But once the COVID scenario stepped in, it came in, it definitely reset a lot of things. Past behavior was no longer the best predictor of future behavior, because now, food delivery in India is largely, here the circle that decides on the purchase is your family, right? Mm-hmm. The way the families would look at food delivery, the way the primary orderer of the household will look at food delivery, the meanings completely changed post the pandemic, right? All of a sudden you have to be aware about, okay, what does my family think? Am I, due to the paranoia that set in, am I compromising their safety? Now, these are dimensions that never existed before, right? Dynamics between family members that never existed before, and that kind of reset a lot of things for us, right? And the tough task for maybe about 3 to 6 months was just trying to figure out how are the occasions going to change? How is the the payoffs that consumers have while making their order, whether it's financial, whether it's safety, or whether it's, how the family will perceive it. How do they kind of like balance and look at all of this while making a purchase decision, right? And I think now when we look back, we feel a lot more sorted than we were probably 6 months ago. And a lot of that ties back to, in the end, people want to revert to some of the, earlier behaviors, the way they would have wanted to use the category. And luckily, we have seen some of those trend lines come back. And with the learnings from what we have picked up before, it seems like a good road ahead.
Great. So I'm going to come back to you in a little bit and request you to share some of those learnings. But before that, Amit, I'm going to come to you next, and I'm going to pick a context that Umesh just mentioned, and I'm going to request you to put it in an entirely different context. Umesh spoke about how decision-making is now getting impacted because a person who was perhaps ordering lunch from their office for themselves is now at home and is looking at ordering lunch for the entire family. And so there is a concept of a larger community coming into play, influencing the decision. And I'm now going to bring this to you, and I'm going to request you to help tie this to the B2B environment, because I know it works there as well. I remember you mentioning about communities and what customers expect increasingly in that area.
Yep, no, sure. Thanks, Dipti. So I think ultimately the bottom line is that every consumer or customer, as we would like to think of them, is a human being, right? And if you look at this, the human race over the last 200 years, right? What essentially changed is we used to all stay in very rural, connected communities together, right? So these were very familial, emotional communities that we used to stay in the 19th century, the first half of the 20th century, and then we suddenly moved to very urban, rational, contractual societies, right? So that shift from community to societies happened in the second half of the 20th century and continued for the first few years of the 21st century. Ultimately, everyone had that secret desire to go back to that communal living, right, and connecting together. And I see that that community sense of community has come back very strongly because of the pandemic. People have started getting much more connected. People have started caring a lot more wherever they interact, whether you're a customer, whether you're a supplier. Everyone put their best foot forward to help each other, right? So I do, and then even if you're a customer, you are trying to connect with other customers and help them with their buying decisions, right? Giving them the right recommendations. So I think the pandemic did accelerate that return to the community living that we used to have, which we've unfortunately forgot for 50 to 70 years, and it's just bringing it back. Yeah, and we see that in the B2B space also, right? So behaviors which were completely contractual and rational overnight became, oh, if you do not have the facility open now, we understand. We will wait for you to deliver the goods for a week. So we do see that connect amongst our supply chain right now. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Amit. And I remember you also mentioning about the social capital that a brand carries, and that's the point that I'll come back to you with. Sunil, last on but not the least in the round, you have a very wide industry exposure, and I remember you spoke to me about um, understanding different Indias that exist in our country, India, Bharat, and everything that goes in between. And you're very passionate about how technology can play a better role. So I'd like you to share that with our audience very quickly so that we can then go back to discussing some examples.
Sure, Dipti, sure. So, what the pandemic has done is, kind of accelerated some kind of behaviors that had begun to happen, and also reversed some of it. Like, Amit just talked about communities. So what one would like to do is just, pull back, and because behind these sort of consumer behavior, there's a larger fundamental shifts that happen for them to kind of, take effect. So if we were to just kind of pull out and see some of the larger sort of strands, because we look at cultures and look at consumers within the culture. So some of the larger shifts, for example, the India versus Bharat, it used to be binary. There used to be a great divide between India and Bharat, and on some aspects, true, they were on a continuum, but they were moving on different trajectories. At least some of the axes were very different. What the pandemic has done is to collapse a lot of binaries, there. And second thing is, this, collective to individual kind of a binary that was there. So earlier, Amit also touched upon that, but, from collective to individual to now communities, in a sense, because one feels community is different from the earlier idea of collective, because, earlier the collective was kind of, it kind of traveled down from the earlier generation, versus communities, the ways of being is different. The communities are creating their own rules, which we need to understand. So we need to understand this new community psyche, and and multiple categories. It impacts friendship, family, food, beauty, health, everything. Then one more thing is this idea of, what I find fascinating is this destiny driven versus individual control. Because we come from a culture which is, which was very strong in destiny, and last 10-20 years, brands and marketing ecosystem was driving towards putting individual at the center, say in the control. Now suddenly pandemic, what it does is pulls the carpet from, under this construct. Now you are not in control, so what happens there? How do categories like finance, education, matrimony, future, how do these categories operate? just one or two more things. I was thinking about this idea. How do we consume meaning? What is the meaning of life? And how do you distinguish from meaningful pursuit to meaningless chores? There's a clear distinction between utility and desires. And I feel last 1 year this distinction has taken interesting sort of twists. For example, cooking was a chore. Suddenly it became the center of your family experiences. That's how the meanings kind of shift. So it will be interesting to look at those idea of family as a unit. Now coming to technology again, India has had a very interesting relationship with technology, which is different from the West. West always, because technology has emerged from there. So there's a master and servant kind of relationship with technology, master slave. But for us, technology landed here. So the relationship is more of awe. So are we doing enough to kind of have, although brands have started to cater to the individual, understanding individual, from a serving them point of view, but in terms of sensorially, what are the kind of experiences brands can create for the consumers that will be interesting to see. So those are my kind of initiatives.
Great, thank you so much, Sunil. I think what all of you have said ties back very well with what we have observed in the industry over the past month. We've had a lot of requests coming to us asking us, how do we measure emotion? Because suddenly brands and organizations are realizing that human beings, customers are not really making entirely rational decisions. And the pandemic has only kind of further intensified the emotion at play. It has been an extremely emotional time for everyone. And what brands are really now trying to do is they are making a serious effort to understand what are those driving emotions at play. I'll give you an example about what Sunil just mentioned about individual control. The need for human beings to be in control is so strong that we've seen a clear difference between brands that can deliver a perception of control to their customers, drive far better engagement as compared to brands that are not able to do that so well. But with that, I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Nair, and request you to share one example. You said you moved from shipping to logistics and you shifted internally how you serve your customer towards enabling them towards meeting their outcomes. And in this past 1 year, I can just imagine how difficult it must have been for you with borders closing and opening literally at a whim, and you having to keep your ships running, perhaps sometimes mid-ocean. If you could share some examples of how you brought in the agility and flexibility required to deal with a situation like this.
Yeah. Thanks for that question. I think let me also give an example that resonates with all of you, right? We all come from different industries and sometimes it's very difficult to understand where I'm coming from. So I'll try to give an example. See, we moved into this, our strategy to move as a global integrator of logistics started somewhere in 2016. We were till then, we are a 100-year-old company. We are the largest shipping line in the world. We own huge assets in terms of ships and terminals and things like that. And then we said, if we have to sustain for another 100 years, then we have to relook at our strategy and we have to see where we need to go from here and how things are changing. And that's where we started our journey, saying that we need to be an integrator of container logistics and work closely with customers. 2020 was a good example for us, or a good test for us to see whether it works for us, right? And I'll give you an example where when the pandemic hit, then there was a huge requirements for medical equipment, PPE kits, and Europe. And then they approached Maersk line to see if we could help. Let me know if you can hear me, because sometimes my network is not so good. Thank you. In procuring these, right? Because if you look at it, procuring such huge quantity of medical equipment from all over the world is not an easy task, and it may require actually an entire organization to move this, right? And for us, then this was a test because we were saying that we moving in, becoming global integrator of logistics. Here is an opportunity for us to see how far we have reached, right? And what we were supposed to actually just transport goods from wherever we source it to US and Europe, but then it ended up saying that can you also help us in clearing it at from wherever you're getting, because you have government agencies, you have regulations, you have compliance, you have laws. And then for each of these, you need different agents to actually help you in different countries, right? And then it becomes a great effort. For us, actually, we have in over a period of time, we have developed skills in these areas, be it landside transportation, be it custom clearance, be it warehousing, be it cold chain technology, things like that. And I think we moved around 4,000 tons of equipment from across China and other parts of the world into the US and Europe, and it meant that we found source from where to procure. We sourced these goods, we warehoused them, we procured them, warehoused them, cleared them at origin, at destination, and we were working with Amazon, right, to get it to their fulfillment areas in the US and the Europe so it can be distributed. I think it was a great experience, and it tested how far we have reached in our logistics solutions. And actually that now takes us to the next level where we could use it for other verticals, other industries, and give a complete solution. And we did that for Denmark, actually, where we supplied medical equipment and pharmaceutical items to all the hospitals in Denmark during this pandemic. And we must have chartered, I don't know how many flights to move these cargo, right? But it worked very smoothly. And as of last quarter, then we have also signed up with vaccines across the world. And Maersk has signed up with COVAX in the US to do that. So that tells us that we have actually, our strategy worked well. We have the skills now to move cargo from one place to another. It's not just ship, but we have multiple products which work for us. So that's what has worked well for us in this pandemic, I would say. That's the agility and flexibility with which we had to move.
Fantastic. And I'm just going to go ahead and say this. I think we could just say Maersk is like the wellness messenger for all of us, given the kind of cargo and vaccines that you're moving around. It's really heartening to learn what you've shared. And my one key takeaway from what you've shared just now is I think the focus on what the real customer outcome is in this ask, in this requirement, has been very key in what you said, because once we have clarity what we have to deliver, it is then easier to align internal resources. And in our work, we've seen that often there is intent to be flexible, there is intent to be quick, agile, there is a lot of brilliant thinking on the table, but it's just not directed in a laser focused manner to the customer outcome. And I think that understanding that the customer needed the material at their door and not just in their country, I think that shift perhaps helps you a lot. Thank you so much. Suman, I'm going to come back to you. And of course, we spoke about customer outcome here, and I'm going to request you to help us with an example where you mentioned earlier you're going to take digital examples to see how we can perhaps go a little beyond the customer outcome too.
Yeah, sure. So, Dipti, and I'm going to talk about two examples. First, I'll talk about an industry which is fast fashion. The reason I'm picking up these industries, I think a lot of us will resonate with these industries, right? Fast fashion retailing is an industry which is traditionally being extremely, physical in nature, right? Not so much digital. And one of the trends that I noticed when the pandemic struck is, and I was tracking various companies, how some of them were really slow off the block, right? By the time they got their website up and running in a particular fashion, it was already July or even August. I thought that was very slow. But there were some who actually got it up and running very quickly. And what were they doing? What were they doing? What was the hook that they were using for consumers or customers was that, they were giving customers the benefit of a full catalog. To say, hey, if you go to a store, you will get a limited catalog of what is available. But here I'm giving you the benefit of a complete catalog of everything that I have in my repertoire. So, and the whole selection process was made so easy, where you select the style, you select a particular piece, and then you go into garment, size. So that whole journey of consumer actually buying something was made extremely simple, right? Which I thought was an extremely good way of taking it up. But what I thought they failed is, and this is the traditional problem with fast fashion, really is that consumers, when it comes to fashion, want to drape themselves in the clothes to get a fix of whether or not they should buy it. And why not? Because sometimes one of the biggest reasons is that if you see the queue in any fast fashion retail store, the biggest queue is actually outside the trial room. Because everybody wants to go and try something and then come outside, ask their friends. Now, this is a consumer behavior which I noticed that we did not capitalize on using augmented reality to let your customers try on that garment digitally, right? And then seek, expert advice or even seek validation from friends and family. That integration with social media is missing there. So, for example, if I could actually go, and upload my avatar, try that, that cool pair jacket which I'm seeing, and then share it over social media with my friends and say, hey guys, what do you think? Right? Just imagine how that purchase journey becomes so much more, rich, right? And going back to something that Sunil said, it brings in that emotion, right? It also brings in that emotion which you're all lacking. So that is one area where I thought they failed. But I thought an excellent thing is how they merge the physical with the digital. And this is one of the brands where, and I was really surprised in the beginning, and this happened through personal experience. My family likes to do a lot of fast fashion. So, and, 2 daughters, wife, so a lot of purchasing. Is that when it came to returns, the brand said, you've got to come to the store. Initially, I was a little perturbed. I said, why are they asking us to go to the store? I mean, just pick it up, man, go replace it. I don't like the size, I don't like the color, replace it. Then she said, no, you have to go to the store. We said, okay, let's go to the store. So we went to the store and I realized why they were insisting going to the store. Because as soon as we enter the store, I saw there are a lot of people who had come to return. Interestingly, 90% of them walked out with more clothes than they came in to return.
Okay, very interesting.
So what they did is actually got people to walk in with a very specific purpose to say, I need to return or swap this garment. But then the whole physical of the store, the way the garments are displayed, the way they are, put there, the mannequins and all of that, obviously incited people to say, oh, you know what, I should pick this also. Maybe I should try this. So this was an excellent example of how digital and physical were working together. And digital in a way was, enhancing the physical experience.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Suman, for that. And my takeaway from that example of yours is going to be this. What may seemingly look like you're creating more effort for your customer, the returns journey that you mentioned, if it is managed well, if you engage in that journey properly, it is actually a service recovery moment. But if you plan for it, if you do it right, you can actually drive more value than just sorting a problem to a customer satisfaction. You are actually increasing your wallet share with the customer. And I think the key part to that, in my mind, would have been how the communication around it was managed, how the messaging in the store, the layout, everything around it was managed. And that brings me to you, Umesh, on messaging and on communication. I know it has been a key part of how you came out of the impact of the pandemic.
Yeah, so I think consumer communications, or how you build your brand in a more customer-centric way, is something that's been very key to Swiggy, Swiggy's success as an e-com brand, and something that we have always try to do in our advertising is to build relatable stories. So someone watches a Swiggy advertisement, they have to relate to it. This is my family. These are things that will happen in my circle, in my social circle. This is how I relate to it, right? So we have always been very close to consumer that way in terms of our marketing communications. Now, that also limits you slightly. For example, a pandemic sets in, probably there are some food brands who could come and still talk a language of indulgence or cravings and just make it loud enough to surpass the risks that people used to associate with food or food delivery or outside food, right? Maybe Swiggy had much, that's one territory Swiggy could never step into, probably because of the way it operates, what the brand has always stood for, how we have always spoken, etc. But there was almost this, consumers think they are rationalizing, saying that, hey, I want to avoid every risk of transmission, right? Or every risk of infection. But often that what looks more rational to them is fairly irrational, right? When you look at it, there's no logic that's substantiating it. Nobody gets an infection from an e-commerce delivery. There's no proof of it. You have WHO coming in and speaking about it. In such a case, initially we did try to put forward all these digital and physical mnemonics of safety. So digital in the sense that whether it's the best safety standards, call outs in the app, to temperature checks and giving consumers more visibility on it, to, let's say, the more physical things like how a delivery happens. Is it contactless? Is there an option to make it contactless? How's the packaging different from what it used to be? So couple of stream of things that we brought together initially, but later the importance of marketing communications just starts increasing, right? So we realized if we keep shouting safety to risk, one of them, it's only going to make people more and more aware and probably going to spook out consumers who are actually ordering, right? And therefore, we decided that, hey, instead of taking this monster head on, a smarter way to look at it is pitching the message with some social validation. So how Sunil spoke about, when we are creatures who like to know that, hey, others are also doing what I am doing. There's some social validation to it. My neighbors are ordering. Okay, they're not going to judge me for ordering in 4 times a day on my busy work week. So that's where when we used IPL as one of our major vehicles to put this communication across, we hinged on social validation, where hey, so many folks are ordering, crores of people are ordering, crores of orders are getting delivered, then why can't you order? So, and that's an aspect that nobody questions you, because you're saying a fact, right? Nobody's going to say that, acha, people are not ordering. They can't say that. They see that in the app. They know within their MyGate app, there are so many folks checking into the apartment, so many orders getting done. So with all of that coming together, we were able to push through that phase of recovery, without people saying that, hey, Swiggy is not being authentic in what they say, or they can't deliver what they promise. That's how we kind of like smoothened up our communications to get through a very difficult period. And I think it really worked for us in terms of how the speed and the speed of the recovery and the overall growth panned out in the last couple of quarters.
Great. Thank you so much, Umesh. I think the key takeaway here for our audience is that when decisions are emotional, social proof, social validation is a key driver, and it helps to understand how to build it and how to work towards it. Again, connecting back to emotion. Fantastic example. Thank you so much, Umesh. Ajay, I'm going to come back to you with a request of an example of a key shift that you made or your organization made over the last 12 months to align better with your consumers.
Sorry, Dipti, your voice just went a little in between. Could you quickly just ask me the question again?
Yes, so I just want you to very quickly share with us an example of how perhaps what you've seen in your organization or somewhere else in the market, but how internal shifts, how can organizations shift to better align with what their consumers are seeking?
Okay, I'll give this as 2 examples, if that's okay with you, very quickly. One, I think, for want of a better word, people's privacy got invaded. literally, right? I mean, where they were very happy coming to an office where it was a controlled environment to suddenly, the whole family, your interaction moved from just talking to your employee on a daily basis, face to face, to suddenly interacting with the child who's running in the background, to a cup of tea or coffee being served, and well, at times embarrassing, sometimes funny, but I think to me it was such an amazing engagement with the employee and the family, which brought probably the organization together. And I love that. Let me put that as something that was phenomenal, that I could actually step into somebody's house while never having met the family over the last whatever period of time prior to that, first. Second, on the business side, I think in real estate, one of the very key changes, and this is, I think, Suman spoke about it on technology and how it enables. Let's take the sales process. Typically in real estate, like purchases of furniture and garments, is a touch and feel experience. For us, the shift was, and this is something we're experimenting. So I'm not saying we've reached there. It is something that we experimented, necessitated by the fact that people could not physically be there. So what could we do? And that's when we used a combination of AR, again, test, AR and MR. And let's take this experience. Here is a purchase being done by a son who's in the US. He's got his family in the US, and his only connect here are his parents. So his parents walk across to the office, to our office, to say, hey, I'd like to look at the sample flat for my son to do a buying decision. In the earlier time, the parents would come, see, take a decision, call the son, tell him, and a decision is done. Here, through technology, and powerful at that, we were able to, at the time the parents came in, get them connected on AR. The families dispersed across the globe was connected at the same time through the same technology, HoloLens, MS Teams connected, and the entire family went through the experience of a purchase, which earlier would have been done by one part of the family, and the others would just put in the investment, hoping to God that what they invested in is what they wanted. But thanks to technology, you virtually brought the entire family from across the globe. The decision and the feeling for them to be personally involved in that buying decision, to me, was a paradigm change. To me, that's how technology, touch and feel, personal relationships, it brought everything on one forum to be able to make that buying decision that much more inclusive and immersive. If that gives you a wonderful experience of what this has actually, on a positive side, brought.
I think Ajay, this is a great example of how to digitize a transaction to build a relationship.
And personalize it.
Exactly. Fabulous example. I have the event organizers breathing down my neck to conclude, because, of course, we have people following us. So, Amit, very quickly, one key takeaway for our audience, very quickly.
Yep. So I think the one key takeaway I leave the audience with is we all as organizations need to start thinking about our customers as communities and help leverage the social capital that exists in these communities, right? So because ultimately your brand gets your brand trust, your brand loyalty gets built up when you embed your brand in the way the customers live. So there are various dimensions to how these communities interact, whether it's the relationships that they have between them, some of the norms that they follow. So a norm of reciprocity, where you reciprocate to another community member if you get a favor from them, right? So, and then of course, every community that gets created has a shared vision of why they have come together. So how well do you embed yourself in that community? Yeah. So those are a few things that brand leaders and marketeers need to think about here. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Amit. Sunil, one key takeaway very quickly from you before we bring this to a close.
Yeah, Dipti. I think what needs to be done is, behind these, consumer behavior, there are these, big mental shifts that are happening, the mindset shifts. I think, as marketers, as brands, we need to, take note of those shifts. What are the largest shifts? And then, everything gets aligned around that. So just, an example I'll kind of to substantiate that, what I'm trying to say, for example, one happened to, worked on beauty category during the pandemic. Now, as a category, it faced a interesting challenge, because the utility, the social utility diminished of beauty, because when you're sitting home all the time, the particularly makeup, so how does it create a new narrative? What is the larger insight that it can ride on, and what is a new role that makeup category can play? So what we realized is, how beauty and makeup, it is bringing positivity and cheer in tough times. It became a way for people, for women to, keep their spirits high. And beauty from a social idea, it became a self-indulgent idea. And, we and the brand kind of rode on that shift, how beauty became a self-indulgent idea in the pandemic. And therefore, the larger idea emerged out of that. So essentially, to capture the mindset shifts rather than just looking at the specific behavior.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone on the panel. It has been fabulous for me to have this conversation for you, for the benefit of our audience, and at the risk of being completely hated by Harish here, I'm getting repeated prompts. But I'm going to summarize this in a few points, which are key takeaways for me from this conversation. Number one, what brands have to really understand, put the effort in understanding what is the outcome that the customer is seeking, understand the communities that the customer is involved with, and what is the outcome the community is seeking, and be a part of it. That allows you to drive higher engagement. And how do you do that? You do that by driving a few things. You do that by driving practical value. You do that by, so for example, like Sunil mentioned, if makeup had lost practical value because people weren't going out, how do you redefine that practical value for your consumer? From social proof to moving it to self-care. I'm sorry, I'm changing those terms a little bit. Second thing, what triggers are working when your customer is making a decision? Is there paranoia? Is there need for control? Is there need for empowerment? These are good things to understand. Third thing, understand the emotions that are at play. It's really important to measure now as people get more and more emotional. Emotion intensity is becoming a stronger and stronger driver in everyday transactions as well. The third thing is to understand what is the public utility, what is the ego, self-fulfillment driver that is at play here for your consumer. And finally, what stories are you building? Are you being seen as a socially responsible, ecologically responsible brand, a brand that is not just after money and growth, but is looking at the larger good of the people? In fact, even in our studies, our work, this has come out as a really strong driver. With that, I am going to close it and hand it back to you, Kate.